What's going on, guys? Tower number 9 here with another Star Wars Unlimited TCG video from Supershowdown Poznan. Shout out to Sklad Gear for hosting this tournament and for putting the footage of these games up on their YouTube channel. This time we have a top one of the top 16 matches between Mikolaj playing Boba Green and Jan also playing Boba Green. So this is a mirror, both of them using ECL. And we're going to see how this Boba mirror goes here in the top 16 of Super Showdown Poznan. And as always, my apologies for anyone whose name I mispronounced. I really do not speak Polish. All right, so Jan is going to lead us off with a Crafty Smuggler, 2-cost 2/2 with Shielded. Mikolaj plays a Crafty Smuggler of his own, and it looks like he points out that Jan had accidentally put his in the space arena, so they move it over to the ground arena. Not that it incredibly matters, but the mat does say ground units and space units, one on each side, so I suppose it matters at least some. Jan plays a 7th Fleet Defender here, so Mikolaj goes with a resupply. Now, I have to say, I think Mikolaj is ahead on that interaction. A lot of these Boba Green decks are actually skipping the 4-cost slot completely, and their goal is to go um, first turn play a 2-cost card, second turn play a 3-cost ramp card, whether that be the resupply or the Super Laser Technician, and then skip to a 5-cost unit or a 5-cost card on turn 3, as well as a early Boba deployment. So right now, Mikolaj has hit the ramp, and Jan has not. Um, he does remember to put a shield on his defender there, though, which I think was perhaps forgotten early on. And we will see how this progresses. Overall, I think this is actually a pretty interesting. This is a pretty interesting mirror. There's definitely some considerations here with how to make the most out of Energy Conversion Lab. Boba, you got Boba Fett, potentially the Steadfast Battalion. These decks tend to run Bosk as well, so there's really a lot of ambush threats. You have Boba Disintegrator. Definitely some interesting cards, some strong interactions here. Um, Jan leads off the third turn of the game with a quick attack from his 7th Fleet Defender, inflicting 3 damage on Mikolaj's base. Mikolaj going to go for a fast Boba deployment. The Crafty Smuggler continues to put pressure on Mikolaj's base, hitting for another 2 damage. We're now at 18 to 13, but Mikolaj has the opportunity to do some damage himself, and interestingly does seem to be focusing the base. Jan plays a Consortium Star Viper. Okay. Not really a card that's very strong in this matchup necessarily. It's mostly played as a counter to the powerful space aggro potential that some of the aggression heroism rebel decks have. But the Consortium Star Viper in this case might be some good value for Jan because if it survives to the end of the turn, he'll be able to take initiative and then use that Star Viper to attack, dealing 3 damage and restoring 2 to his own base. Mikolaj plays a Bosk with no ambush. Interesting situation there. I do think that isn't the highest value play. It would have been probably nicer to have something like an overwhelming barrage to knock out the Star Viper and remove shields from both those other units would have been pretty cool. But having Bosk on the board is not bad. And then, as I discussed earlier, Mikolaj's base is hit by Jan's Star Viper, inflicting another 3 damage and restoring 2 HP from Jan's base, I believe. I'm not entirely sure. Oh, I guess he maybe hadn't finished resourcing or deciding something there. So 3 damage to base, that should bring us up to 10 total damage inflicted on Mikolaj's base. And then 2 HP 2 HP healed from Jan's base thanks to the conditional restore 2 on the Consortium Star Viper. So Consortium Star Viper is a 3-cost 3/3 space unit, and it has restore 2, but only while you have the initiative. So that makes it an interesting card, but a major issue for some of the aggro decks that have a lot of space fighters with only 3 HP, and that do not hit back for 3 themselves, at least not on defense. So the Green Squadron A-Wing, while a very strong aggro card, only has 1 power on defense. So if you ambush in a Consortium Star Viper, The Star Viper will take it out, potentially heal you, and also get the A-Wing off the field while surviving itself with 2 HP left. So it can be very useful against those rebels. I do tend to think that playing it main deck is reflective of teching for aggro rather than it being necessarily a really good card in other matchups, though. In this situation, it looks like Bosk swung into Jan's base, only to be ambushed by Boba Disintegrator using the Energy Conversion Lab. Boba Disintegrator has an on-attack ability that deals 3 damage to the defender if they are exhausted and did not interplay this turn. So he's able to do a total of 6 damage there, removing the 5 HP Bosk, only to himself be ambushed by an ECL on the Steadfast Battalion, which I believe buffs itself to do more damage there with Overwhelm. And Jan's base is rapidly being destroyed, and he only now deploys Boba, only for Mikolaj to play a surprise strike and destroy the base with a crafty smuggler. So Jan's Boba had barely taken the field when the game ended there. Tough situation. It seemed like Mikolaj was able to just push a lot of damage to the base. Earlier, I had said that the Bosk wasn't the greatest play ever. It may not have been, but at the same time, it was advancing another unit and playing for an aggro game plan. You can get more value with Bosk than was shown here in situations where you're able to get an ambush early on, maybe ready up some resources, play an event, trigger his ability, that sort of thing. That wasn't the case here, but he did end up allowing Mikolaj to just do more damage, so ended up getting the job done. All right, so with a quick win for Mikolaj, we will see how the players adapt to round 2. I think those Consortium Star Vipers are likely going to be removed from the deck in this situation, simply because they tend to be a card to counter Rebel aggro, as I was kind of discussing earlier on in the video. Okay, so now let's see here. Players just shuffling up, and we are viewing this at 1.25x speed, so, if you think they're really fast at shuffling, they might well be quite fast. They do look to be, pretty experienced shufflers and so on, but they are not as fast as the video immediately presents. Okay, so will Jan be able to make a comeback and win this round to bring us to game 3 of the match, or will Mikolaj be able to close it out with a 2-0 win to advance to the top 8? I believe this tournament was played as single elims in the top cut, which is the typical way that these things are structured. So, the pressure is on for Jan. If he can win this game, he is still alive in the tournament, but if Mikolaj beats him here, that is it. All right, let's see how it goes. Players drawing their initial hands. Looks like those Consortium Star Vipers stayed in the deck for Jan. However, it does end up being a quick mulligan for Jan there, while Mikolaj considers his options and ends up going for a mulligan himself. It's interesting. Different players have different ideas of what they want to mulligan for in this game. So, for instance, one very common mulligan rule is if I don't have anything I can play on turn 1, I'm going to mulligan and try to get a 1 or a 2 cost unit. That can be a solid rule for many decks, especially for decks that need to be aggressive and putting pressure on the opponent from very early. For instance, if your Sabine deck doesn't have any unit to play on the first turn, you are likely in a lot of trouble. I have come back and won as Sabine from a game where I started out without any card in play, but it does make it a lot harder. Um, on the other hand, I've also heard players that I would consider to be like pretty good. So like Thork, for instance, I don't know if you guys check out his channel, but he has some cool stuff on there. I know that he and I were talking earlier, and he said that when he's playing Vader, for instance, he actually mulligans not for an early play, but for an early ramp card to try to guarantee that he's ramping and getting Vader out sooner. I don't know if that's still the case. This was some time ago, and I think that it's possible that his outlook has changed. But that's just an example of a different thing you might target for your mulligan, and it does look. It looked for a moment like Jan didn't have a turn 1 play, but it does seem like he has a Viper Probe Droid there, and he is going to play it. So that does allow him to. Oh yeah, what is happening here? I guess he. Oh yeah, he's realizing the ground arena is on the right, maybe. Oh, but Mikolaj is still resourcing. That's why he took it back. Yeah. So you should try to be sure to ask your opponent if they're done resourcing before you make plays, simply because you can accidentally give them information, which is not what you want to do. Um, all right. So Mikolaj finishes resourcing. Now we see the Viper Probe Droid. Getting to see the hand. So two Cartel Spacers, Greedo and Boba. Interesting. And that is going to be an organized play Alt Art Greedo as well. So kind of a fancier version of the card there. Mikolaj leads off with a Cartel Spacer. I'm a little surprised that he left two Cartel Spacers in hand rather than resourcing one of those, but maybe he's identified that as an important card for the matchup, or maybe he even drew three Cartel Spacers and did end up resourcing one. We'll have to see how this goes. This time it's Jan who has the early ramp with a resupply coming into play as an exhausted resource. If Mikolaj has a Super Laser Technician, ambushing it in here to take out the Viper Probe Droid would keep him even on the ramp, while also allowing him to potentially play that Cartel Spacer if he still has it in hand by becoming a readied resource and then giving him a resource with Boba. But he actually ends up ambushing with Boba Fett Disintegrator instead after the probe droid has already swung, so that Boba Disintegrator defeats the droid with his on attack ability. Mikolaj then readies a resource and plays Greedo. So Mikolaj looking quite ahead in terms of board right now with Boba Disintegrator and Greedo. Jan's Boba takes the field. Let's see if Mikolaj has a direct counter. It looks like he's going to be focused on the base instead this time. With Greedo attacking, are we going to see an overwhelming barrage here? No, it's going to be a steadfast battalion ambushing, probably ambushing into Boba Disintegrator here. Um, yeah, steadfast battalion ambushes Boba Disintegrator, and that's interesting. It appears that he did not buff the Steadfast Battalion, so often the on-attack ability there is used to buff the battalion itself to deal damage with Overwhelm, but either he did not choose to do that or he forgot Overwhelm. We don't have any audio from this match, so it's hard to tell, but I did notice Jan pointing to Boba Fett, so I think it's very possible that he used the Steadfast Battalion buff on his leader, Boba. Um, we see a waylay on the Steadfast Battalion, does send it back to hand. Boba used to get a resource back. Now, the downside of this is it means that the Steadfast Battalion could be played in the future and it would essentially have been healed from that damage. But since it only has ambush with the Energy Conversion Lab, I don't think that's necessarily such a bad situation for Mikolaj. In fact, I think that waylaying that is a good way to get some tempo back, because if Jan does end up replaying the if he does end up replaying the Steadfast Battalion, it'll use almost his whole turn. Now, Mikolaj is gonna, in theory, be able to deploy Boba Fett this turn. Jan's Boba was, I believe, buffed by the Steadfast Battalion and swung into the base there, clearing it. Um, Bosk ambushes Greedo and defeats him. Mikolaj goes for Greedo's top deck, but misses the top deck. So by missing the top deck, that does mean that Bosk gets to stay alive. The Cartel Spacers are doing their best to put pressure on Jan's base. Boba Fett attacks into Mikolaj's base, readying two resources from Greedo being killed, and then Jan plays a 7th Fleet Defender. However, Mikolaj deploys his own Boba Fett and then fires off an overwhelming barrage, inflicting looks like 2 damage to finish off Bosk, and then the remaining then 3 damage to Boba Fett and 1 damage to clear the shield on that defender, and then attacks readying 2 resources and plays a crafty smuggler. So Mikolaj getting a lot of smaller units onto the board and inflicting serious damage on his opponent's Boba Fett. Let's see what Jan's response will be. I think there is a shoot first in Jan's hand that could potentially be used with a card like the Defender to clear out one of those ships and remaining alive, even though the shield was stripped by that overwhelming barrage. Not entirely sure that's going to be the best play, but It is an option. I believe Mikolaj is now on 6 resources and Jan at 7, though with the way they're stacking their resources, it's a little hard to tell. If he does have 7 resources, Jan could potentially use a shoot first and then later actually play out Fett's Fire Spray. Another play would be to use the Surprise Strike that he has in hand to clear out his opponent's Boba Fett. And that's exactly what he's going to do. So even though his Boba was wounded by the overwhelming barrage, Surprise Strike enables him to trade there by doing +3 damage. Really one of the best cards in the game, I think. Surprise Strike is a very solid option. One of the Cartel Spacers attacks into Jan's base. Jan trades the Defender for the other Spacer. 2 more damage to Jan's base from the Crafty Smuggler. Jan plays his Steadfast Battalion. It's a little clunky though, and Mikolaj brings out Fett's Fire Spray to close out the game. So another win for Mikolaj, and in both of these games, Mikolaj seemed to be more of the aggressor and was able to get a lot of pressure on his opponent. But the interesting thing was in the second game, Jan had the faster start, but ended up getting kind of pushed into the more defensive role anyway. By Mikolaj, I think being able to take advantage of Boba's ability and get a bunch of small units out with those extra resources that he was getting, allowing him to put more pressure on, and with that nice overwhelming barrage, allowing him to do a bunch of damage as well. So that's going to do it for that match. Congratulations there to our winner, Nikolaj. And yeah, we will be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited coverage, including uh, the top 8 game from this tournament, which will be in a separate video. So thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. I will catch you guys later.